Ferdy, I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing for Comcast Western New England region, and I'm here today with a couple of very smart people to talk about the wonderful world of 4K. So I'd like to introduce first to my immediate left, which is Mr. Josh Chase, who's the Manager of Product Marketing for Comcast Greater Boston region.
Thank you,
Welcome.
sir. Happy to be here.
And then to our far left is Fahad Hadair, Chief Technology Officer of NECTA, the greatest Red Sox-based network in the world. So great job.
That is true.
At least in my rankings. I can't speak for anybody else.
Thank you. Happy to be here. And you're right. Not only just Red Sox, as well as Bruins, too.
That's right. Absolutely, you're right. My dad would be crushed if I left the Bruins out. So excellent. So we are here to talk about 4K today. And I am very thrilled that NECTA asked me to moderate this panel, not because I like to support NECTA, but I feel like I need a bit of an intervention or maybe some sort of I just need help. And this is what I need help with. I've been in the cable industry for 22 years, and about 20 years ago, I remember being at a cable show much like this in North Carolina and seeing my first test of HD. And it was amazing, and it was so cool, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is going to change everything. And then I remember being at a cable show, probably this one, about 10 years ago, and seeing demos of 3D. And we had lots of panels about 3D, and we discussed the content and the delivery system and how we're going to get it, how the consumer is going to interact. And none of that really happened, whereas the HD did. So my first question to you two around 4K is this HD or is this 3D in how the consumer is going to interact with it? And do you want to duck the question?
No, I mean, I'll take it on. And
Okay.
actually, I share a similar story to what you were just saying. And Brian Roberts put it to say that, you know, Comcast took a relatively passive approach to HD, making sure it was going to catch on, and are people really going to buy these super expensive televisions? So we were a little bit of a follower in the HD space. And then when 3D came out, Comcast said, we're not missing the train. We are all in on 3D. Sadly, 3D missed the train. So I think it's fair to say that 4K is really an HD as opposed to a 3D. The industry has still sort of played a little bit of catch-up because TVs move a lot faster than broadcast. I think everybody kind of knows that from our past history. So we've taken some steps to bring 4K to our customers as best we can. And I'll show you in a little bit on kind of a demo here of our X1 platform, what we're doing to really make 4K easy to access and help our customers find it.
Great. And Fahad, how about yourself from a content standpoint? Where does that fall in that spectrum?
Absolutely. So from NECTA's side, from the very beginning, our CEO, Sean McGrill, was always on the forefront of the industry about technology, because that's one thing we learned about our viewers, that they embrace technology and they embrace sooner than you think. And back in the days, NECTA was one of the first few channels, especially in the sports industry, to go HD. Same thing when the 4K word came out in the industry a few years ago, we started learning about it. And Joshua is right. Why we are playing catch up, we have to learn a little bit from the history. What happened is when HD came out, the formats were very simple. There were one or two formats, and it was easy to adopt one or the other one and go out and set up your production workflows. But when 4K came, before the linear broadcasters jumped into it, the streaming broadcasters started making the content. And what they did is they all started adopting different type of formats. And that is the biggest reason that at that point, the equipment manufacturers that provide the broadcast equipment in the truck, in the stations, they took a step back. And they didn't want to invest on product that they were not sure that will pick up. They wanted to first make sure that there is a set format that everybody agrees on before they start putting the investment. So this is the biggest reason that it took a while for 4K to be adopted by the broadcasters. Now, consumers this time were ahead. Last year, over 20 million 4K sets were sold. These days, pretty much any set you go and buy is 4K. So in last 1 year, we have seen more evolution in the 4K world. And just to be specific, about the word 4K, and not to throw a lot of technical terms, but 4K is technically for cinema. The right word that you use for the live sports or live broadcast in news or anything is UHD. Not a lot of difference, but it's technically big difference here. And consumers started buying these sets, so we knew it was coming. And from last 1 year at NECTA, we started developing a plan under the direction of Sean that we need to be in the forefront of this technology. We have viewers, we have the demand, so let's see what we can do. So what we started doing is we evaluated our goals, and based on that, we decided that not only we have to do UHD or 4K, as we say, that will not be enough. Consumers are very smart. The content they are watching these days is much more than 4K, so we had to add HDR on top of it. And since we are a sports channel, one of the biggest game changer for us is high frame rate. So 4K HDR with high frame rate is where you see the actual difference in the live sports. When you see a home run by Mookie Betts or a touchdown in a Patriots game, this is where you see the actual difference with the high dynamic range and high frame rate. So NECTA has been aggressively working on this plan since last year, and I'm happy to share more about that.
Well, so let me follow up with that, because I remember a few years ago being, again, part of something like this where there was a discussion of, is it 4K or is it HDR? It almost felt like it was a choice that the industry was trying to figure out which path. But is that the case, or is it more, as you say, kind of a stacking situation, that there's different situations why you would use different? And is there a preference from a cost and production standpoint, from the network standpoint?
Yes. So 4K is just resolutions, putting more pixels. Like this is pretty much 55-inch TV, and it will just do fine with 1080i, but people are buying more and more bigger screen TVs, and that requires more pixels. So when you're talking about 65, 75, or 100-inch TVs, this is where you see more pixels in 4K. But just 4K doesn't bring enough value for a consumer. The testing and all the workflows that we put for HDR has shown the actual difference is when you see the quality of the video, and that's not 4K, that's HDR. Okay. And this is where the SDR, which is generally referred as HD, the spectrum of colors you play in HD versus what you play in HDR, it just changes the viewing experience. And on top of that, as I said, the business side of it is we have to make sure that anything we do or any business do, there is a return on that investment. And I think adding those two flavors of HDR and high frame rate definitely bring the most bang for the buck.
That's great. Yep. So as we see here with the demos next to us, again, I think back of that we had a moment in time where there was this wow of people would go from standard def to high def. Do you feel like you get that same wow, or is this more iterative?
Yeah, and I think, first off, no tear jerkers from us, so I had to put some fluffy animals and cute guys up there.
Right.
We all needed a little recovery from that. Amazing videos.
I'm happy to share some NECTA footage.
Okay, good. Yeah, and I think, you know, when you go into a store, right, and you're looking at a brand new TV, first off, you're just walloped by a wall of televisions, and how do I choose? And these all look amazing, and the producers are doing great jobs of putting out content that is developed in 4K and UHD. So when I look at it, right, size is one big thing for it, but for me, when I just look at a 4K piece of content, visually it's just going to jump out more off the screen for me, right? First off, I'm not wearing things on my face to get it in 3D, which is great, but it's really just more visually appealing for me, right? And the TVs nowadays, and I think anybody would agree, you put these side by side, HD versus 4K, you're going to see a ton of difference. And then when you factor in things like frame rate changes, if I pull up on the web, watch a stream of 60 frames per second hockey, it's a whole new world, pardon the Aladdin reference, but it's absolutely amazing.
I don't think Disney's a sponsor. You shouldn't have done that.
Okay, sorry.
Excellent. So, Fahad, you mentioned something earlier, which I'm always a little bit interested in, is the idea of the impact on the TV size. So people want bigger and bigger screens and sort of a cinema experience in the living room, but is there sort of a point of diminishing returns either up or down? If you've got, you know, a 20-inch TV that you want in your kitchen, does it matter? Or, I'll lean back. Or the same, like, is there a place that if you go to 70 inches, it just can't keep up with this?
Yes, so this is where, going back again, not to keep repeating the previous point, but this is important to bring back that point again, that just 4K itself plays an important role when you go bigger screen TV.
Yeah.
But when you add HDR and high frame rate, you can do it on 1080i or 1080p as well. And this is where if you buy a smaller set for your kitchen or for your bedroom versus a 75 or 100-inch set for your living room, you can still experience better quality video with HDR and with high frame rate on a smaller screen TV versus a big screen TV. This is why, in my personal opinion, and the research we have done is just adding 4K will not satisfy all the needs for every consumer.
Gotcha. That's great. So, I think about some of the moments of transition in how consumers consume video content. And it, started with selling TVs, and that Uncle Milty had a big role, and people wanting to have TVs. They couldn't miss that. It became a big thing. And then there was the 1954 Rose Bowl parade, which was one of the first big moments in color TVs that people wanted to see what that really looked like. There was an opportunity. I know in my house it was the 2003 Golden Globes, where my wife saw that people had bad makeup jobs and crow's feet that you could see in HD, and then she was like, I'm on board. We need to have these. What is that moment, you think, for 4K?
Well, I mean, for me personally, I think it's going to lean on sports a ton. Okay. When I see the Bruins in the Stanley Cup next year, and I see it in 60 frames per second, again, the difference in just visual appeal between watching a traditional stream or a traditional high-def quality sporting event and something in high frame rate and HDR is just, it's otherworldly. And when we looked at HD, we saw these televisions, and I think all of us have asked, how can it get any better than this? Like, how can I read the word Titleist on a golf ball any more clear than I do right now?
Right.
And the answer is, just you wait. Like, it actually does get even better, so.
Cool. So Josh, kind of with that, so how much content is there out there now? So recent stats would say about 31% of the TVs in American homes today are 4K, but there's not 31% of the content, or is there? And so what's out there, and how do you find it?
Well, first off, this was totally not a planted question. Shameless plug. So Comcast here is doing a ton of work around taking all the 4K content that is out there in the world. And I think when customers rush out to buy new technology, specifically things like HD and then even going to Blu-ray, it was, how do I find the content and how do I bring it into one space? Well, we've got our X1 demo here, and with the wonder of our Emmy Award-winning voice remote, our customers can just say, am I towing all the company lines here? It's great,
It's
right?
good.
Our customers can really just say into their remote 4K. They don't have to look for content. We'll kind of cater it and editorialize it for them. So on X1, if you have a 4K TV and our 4K box, what we've done essentially is brought in all of the 4K content into a single portal, if you will. And we do it in a few ways, right? We're out in market saying that we've given our customers access to the most 4K UHD content. Some of that does come from our partners at Netflix and at Amazon Prime. Most notably, if you've watched the most recent season of Stranger Things, for instance, they are recording almost all of their original content in 4K. Amazon Prime Video, same as well. So we've taken away sort of the barriers of entry. One of those is simply finding the content, and we've put it all into this one great space. So as I go through, our customers can go through this menu and say, here's all of the different over-the-top streaming services that X1 brings into my platform that I can stream in UHD. Here's all of the movies that you can either rent or purchase, and then you own them, and they are yours, and you can sort of take them with you as you're traveling. And then here's what's free for our customers as well. And we are continuing to add more and more 4K content. Again, talking in the range of sports here, we have done a handful of things with sports throughout the year already. We did the Women's World Cup back in July. We had every event live in 4K and then on demand 4K the next day for those customers. We've done some things with college sports. We're going to have Notre Dame up there. We've had MLB playoffs available in 4K free for our customers. And my hope by the end of the year is we see things like Thursday Night Football and a couple more major league sports, namely hockey, NBA. So we've got plans to bring that all into the forefront. And again, if you go home and you pull up 4K on your voice remote, you've got just massive lists. And I didn't even mention YouTube, which has 16 billion hours of content streamed every single month, and guess what? A ton of that content is available in 4K. So if you want to throw on just some simple, nice visual playlists here, you can pull it up all right through X1. So I think we've done a great job of editorializing everything, but really organizing it for our customers. And I think that customers are seeing a ton of value in it. And if you are a customer of ours and you have a 4K TV, but you don't have the right equipment, if you go and try and watch something in 4K, we'll even prompt you and say, it's time for you to upgrade your box, and you can start a process to ship it out to you or stop in at one of our retail stores. So we're doing as best we can to remove those barriers of entry to make sure that folks are enjoying this investment that they have.
So just a quick follow-up question in there, or two things actually, but one of them being, so if you are a non-4K customer with a non-4K box, you can still see at least, if you're, so basically what I'm getting at is if you are thinking about buying a 4K set, you can at least go in and look at what's there from a content standpoint if it's worth your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you go in, right, we actually, in our menu, we'll tag a lot of this content. So if you pull up an episode or an actual show, you'll see tags in there. Over on the right here, we have English, Espanol, ratings and whatnot. And we'll call out if it's 4K, UHD. So we'll actually let you know that the content is available. And then if you are a non-4K TV having customer, you can still see that it's there. And then maybe a little bit of an appeal to say, hey, I could get all this content in 4K, right? If I upgrade my TV, and Black Friday is coming up and all that stuff. So
that is a lesser Baldwin in 4K?
Yeah.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
I also want to mention that Josh, you hit on Emmy Award, you mentioned 4K, you hit Emmy Award winning voice remote. You only missed Internet Essentials for Comcast Bingo. So, next time. Almost, I was rooting for you. So with all this, Fahad, what is the impact on bandwidth and delivery in the space of, I think about sort of the historical QAM delivery system. Is that obsolete? Is this too much of a bear to handle? How are we going to deliver this to the customer?
It's a great question, because the biggest challenge basically that lies right now is now we have the workflows to set up and produce live games in 4K HDR, but how to deliver it to viewers. The traditional cable QAM that delivers the video channels to your home is like a pie, and depends how many broadcasters you have, everybody gets their pie and gets smaller and smaller because it has a limited bandwidth. What we have seen in recent last 1 year, especially from Comcast, Cox, Charter, and other fellows, that they're working on the IP roadmap. And you guys have one already out there. And what it brings and what it means to us as broadcasters is that if I am producing a game and transmitting it at 50 meg or 40 meg, I'm not limited to that QAM. You can deliver that to the customer with the same bandwidth without compressing it. So I think that's very promising. QAM is good right now, but with more and more channels going 4K, the delivery has to transition in most cases to IP.
Okay. So yesterday, Mr. McGrail did a great job of talking about kind of the way the balance of sports programming and the cost that have to do that from a production and what you're sending out to the game and what's back at the studio. So with the lens of 4K coming and the pressures on the cost of production, how do you balance that of replacing all your cameras, and what are you doing about that?
Great question. And so in addition to what Sean said, the ultimate goal is basically to have enhanced viewer experience, but at the same time, every one of us run a business here, right? So we have to keep the cost in control. So our goal is we have to have the same product out from the same mobile production truck that can produce 4K HDR and HD, traditionally refers as SDR. And the reason is SDR is still going to be bread and butter for most broadcasters for many, many years. And we have to maintain the quality, and we have to maintain that feed going to viewers until most of the industries and most of the viewers are transitioned to 4K only. So right now, most of the mobile trucks, when we produce the game, they offer a B unit, but we are working closely with our truck vendors or some alternate solutions to do single production to produce same game in 4K and HD for the same viewer. And that will definitely reduce the cost. It's a challenge that is holding other broadcasters back too, because this is where you talk about ROI on the product, and you have to justify that before you start investing in it.
Yeah. Okay. So sort of I don't call it lightning round, although I love a lightning round, which is is there a piece of 4K content out there that made you go wow? That's like your favorite thing in 4K today?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually inspired me to spend a good chunk of money going on a vacation. So there's a 4K piece of content on YouTube about Angel's Landing in Zion National Park in Utah. And if you're not familiar with Angel's Landing, it's a piece of rock about the width of this remote, and there's only about a 1,500-foot drop on either side of you. And of course, crazy people like to cross it and go out to the cliffs and take some pictures for Instagram. So I watched this video of this gentleman wearing a GoPro filming this traverse, and while my hands are sweating just talking about it, I was like, I need to go do that.
Yeah.
So earlier this year in July, went out to Angel's Landing, woke myself up at 5 in the morning, walked up to Angel's Landing, and I looked out at it, and I had a real moment of, why am I doing this as a human being? And it all goes back to this amazing piece of 4K content. So
sounds like 4K could ruin lives. How about yourself?
There is a lot of great content out there, but for live broadcasts, the best is yet to come next year for Red Sox and Bruins.
Nice. That's an excellent corporate placement right there. Well done. Well played. You get Nesson bingo. Awesome. All right. So we all get excited about this stuff, and I get it kind of with my. You're helping me through my the loss of love that I feel about 3D. You know, I fell for it, and I'm still trying to get over it.
just hold on to those glasses. They might be worth some money in a few years.
So if I don't want to get hurt again, and we're talking about 4K, we're all excited about it, and then you start hearing people in the corner going, but there's 8K. So do we just ride out 4K and wait for 8K? What, tell me what to do. Help me.
I will help you.
Thank you.
You know, at least for me, right, I think Samsung has put out a couple commercials about like their QLED 8K televisions. And you'll be safe to know that, first off, they're like $60,000. So if anything,
Good.
I think you're okay in that space.
I would concur.
You know, in terms of cost to the consumer, right, TV prices just continue to go down and down. So the barrier of entry for the actual equipment itself is very minimal nowadays. Again, if you're a Comcast customer and you have X1, to swap to a 4K piece of equipment costs you nothing extra per month and nothing extra in terms of one-time costs. So we've done everything we can to make this as easy a transition. No special equipment to buy, no funny glasses on your head. Like everything that we're doing today is focusing on making sure that we can provide that content, just like we're providing things like HD and even still SD nowadays for some customers. So we've taken away all of those barriers. So I think it's easier than ever and inexpensive as ever, which I think is what every consumer wants.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with Joshua on that. I think the right analogy will be buying a Ferrari and running on the regular streets. I mean, how many you see right now? Not a lot, right? So same thing for 8K. I mean, it's great, but right now the infrastructure broadcasters have, the cable and satellite providers have for transmission is not ready, and it's a huge investment if we go that route. But one thing I learned doing technology for a while is never say never. So we have yet to see, but not in the next few years. Nothing is changing or moving away from 4K.
Okay. This question just tickles me a little bit, so you're going to write it out. What is a historical event or TV show that you wish could be done in 4K?
You first, my friend.
Last World Series.
Last World Series. All right, that's fair.
All right. If you know me, one of my things is I don't watch a ton of reality television, but I do watch Survivor.
Okay.
And as much as we joke about the people at the Emmys with their crow's feet,
Yeah.
how funny would it be to see a bunch of Survivor athletes that are on an island for 38 days in full 4K, right?
That would be excellent.
And if I was one of them, I would love it. So
Okay.
yeah.
See, my answer is much more lamer than that. I don't know why the first thing that popped in my head is like, I'd love to see the Dick Van Dyke Show.
I thought you were going to say MASH.
Right.
So I thought you were going to say
Right.
MASH, but that's close.
Rob and Laura Petrie running a house in 4K, that'd be amazing.
You're an old soul, my friend.
I know, a little bit. Okay, so I know it. No, I was a kid with a broken leg a summer. I watched a lot of old TV. So as we go forward, then, what are kind of the next iterations that you get excited about?
That's a tough one for me. I mean, when I think about the technology, and even watching the video from the folks at Cable Labs, like the little robot there following the guy around,
Yep.
like that. I mean, that kind of stuff is very interesting to me. And I think, you know, when we talk about things like voice control and connectivity to our devices in the house, for me, it should just be about sort of seamless interaction. So when I pull up my 4K menu on my TV, right, I don't want to have to learn how to operate things. I don't want to have to learn how to plug things in and connect things. And I want them all to talk together very simply. So for me, it's just about if I don't necessarily know exactly what I'm looking for, right, I can go to my voice remote and say things like show me 4K or what should I watch next, and it'll sort of know kind of my history and what I watch. And that's one of the great things about our platform is you don't have to know exactly what you're looking for. When I talk to my phone and I'm looking for, you know, to set a reminder for Siri, I have to be very methodical in how I say it. Hey Siri, remind me when I get home to do something at 8 p.m. You know, I don't want to be that specific because then it removes the benefit of it. Like I can just go to my device and do it quicker than that. So for me, if I don't know what I'm looking for, I need a little help. Like show me how to do it. And I think we've done a great job at editorializing things and making sure that our customers find stuff that's available to them.
Okay, great.
Yeah, for NESN also, 4K is just one venture we are following. We have other technology things that we are pursuing. Gentlemen before us spoke about the 10G over cable. So more bandwidth is basically the key to roll out most of our technological initiatives in the future. So I think we're going to rely a lot more on bandwidth, either wired or wireless. It could be 5G in certain cases also, but without having the bigger pipes going to consumer, it will be very tough to deliver any new technology initiative. So I think this is where I see that we will be working more closely to all the head ends and cable labs and all those guys to develop some kind of unified strategy.
That's great. Yeah. So in our last couple of minutes, I'd love to throw it out to the floor to see if there's any 4K questions, 8K, 3D, Rob and Laura Petrie. So, yes?
Do you see NFL games? Oh, sorry. Do you see NFL games being broadcast in 4K? And also, there's, I understand with the Red Zone channel and all that, but I think some people wish they could just Google a game, you know, Redskins Patriots and see it. So what do you kind of see as the future of that NFL broadcasting with 4K?
Yeah, that's a great question. First off, there are 4K football games being streamed right now. Not right now, we're not missing a game.
I would have left.
Right? So it's definitely available to consumers today. And what's interesting is, you know, we're seeing it on a multitude of different platforms, right? I think Twitter at one point was streaming football. It's on Amazon Prime this year for Thursday Night Football. Twitch is even streaming some football live as well as their kind of platform migrates. So our goal is to have Thursday Night Football in 4K available on X1. So once that happens and we have that agreement to broadcast that, we'll certainly do what we can to make sure customers find those streams. And again, when you jump into our 4K menu on X1, if there's a sporting event that is being broadcast live, it'll be you know, first and foremost right up front for customers. So we try and make it as easy as possible for them to find it. But it's definitely out there today. But you're right, we've got to do a better job of helping customers find it.
Yeah, same. Those NFL games looks great. There are things that Fox and CBS and other networks are working along with us and other networks who are trying to do 4K to completely make native 4K game. What you are seeing right now is live broadcast is 4K, but the ingest and replay is being down converted to 1080p. The graphics are not 4K as well. So you know, what have been done so far is great, but there is a lot more room for improvement for all of us. So together we all trying to make it better and native 4K production for all the games.
Excellent. Great question. So as we wrap up, I would like to thank our panelists, Fahad and Josh, and I would like to thank you guys for helping me through these troubled times. And thanks everybody for coming out and listening to this discussion on 4K, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.